Back to the beginning, back to the basics. What does that mean? If you get back to the basics, you start to give your attention to the simplest and most important matters after ignoring them for a while. And for me, it exists in my belief because it's easy to forget those things. It's easy to say, yeah, I'm this. This is what I believe. This is where my heart is. God, this and that and that. But we're getting the simple things that brought me there. Because I can stand up and say, "Oh, that's deep." Oh, we can just stand on this and that. But what brought me to that point? And I think that that's the thing that a lot of us start to forget about. So when I started thinking about the first question, do you remember when you fell in love with Jesus? That made me really self-examine about, take a self-examination of my whole life. So when I thought about it, the next question came was, when I first started, was, have you counted the cost to serve Jesus? That was the first thing when I started out. Have you counted the cost to serve Jesus? So we're going to dive into the word. It's pretty lengthy, so I'm going to try to cut it down. Okay, let's go. Luke 14, verses 25 to 33. I might not read them all, but I'll just go through. I got a couple of scriptures here. A large crowd was traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone come to me and does not hate his mother or father, wife or children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own lives, such a person cannot be a disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be a disciple." Then he goes on in 28, suppose one of you want to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. Matthew 8:18-22, the cost of following Jesus. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another disciple said to him, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their own." Part 3, Matthew 26:69. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him and said, "You also was with Jesus of Galilee." But he denied it before them all. "I do not know what you're talking about." Then he went into the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied again with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of them. Your accent give you away." So when I started thinking about and diving into, do you remember when you first fell in love with Jesus? The first thing was asked was, did I count the cost when I started this relationship? Well, did you take in consideration what it costs to be in a relationship with Jesus? And my answer was to myself was no, I didn't. I didn't take into consideration what it would cost. Because when you start looking at it and you're seeing what's required of you, and then the last part where I added in with Peter was when Peter denied Christ was, once they know you as who you are, there's nowhere to hide. You know, you can't hide now once they know you're a child of God. There's nowhere for you to hide. Everyone's looking because you already declared it. So do you really know what it means to live that life? So for me to examine myself, I said, well, let me go back and think about when did I remember first falling in love with Jesus? So I asked that question to everybody in the room.
I can recall first falling in love with Jesus, and I've always grown up in the church. So I've always heard about God's goodness. I've always heard of the testimonies of, others in their relationship and their walk with God. But for me, it didn't really hit home in a sense until I can remember I was in college. And this is going to sound like real kind of, I don't know, I was kind of treating God like a sugar daddy, I guess, in a sense. But I needed to pass a class, or else my GPA was just going to kind of be non existent. Well, I won't say that, but I was trying to graduate in a certain length of time. And I was doing all that I knew how. I was going to class. I just didn't get it. Like, I didn't understand. It was chemistry. And it was one of those big auditorium classes where and we didn't have any lab breakouts or anything like that. And I just was not grasping hold to it. But, I was trying to do what was right. I was trying to live, as best as I knew how. And so what I told God, I was like, look, I'm praising you. I'm serving you. I've heard that you can do this. I heard that you can be a miracle way maker, this and all that. God, I need you. I need you to come through for me. And I literally laid prostrate on my face and cried out to God. And at that time, it was a lot going on. I had medical things happening and all of that. I was trying to graduate. And I just told God, like, look, I've heard of who you can be, but I haven't seen it firsthand in the sense of me actually coming to you on my own behalf. And I need you to, pull up, God. Like, show me you real. And I think I've told this before, but that class I needed, yeah, if you've been in college, they do point systems. And so I needed 280 points to pass that class. I went and I took my final exam. Y'all, I failed this test. I know I did. I know I failed that test. But when I went to look at my final grade average, it was 280 points on the dot. And I said, God, I know that was nobody but you. And for me, it grew my relationship and my trust in God that, like, oh, snap, you really hear me. And you made sure to do it in a way that I knew it was only you that could do it, because had it been 296 points or something like that, it would have been easy to say, oh, well, I just did well on my final, But no, I for real, the test will show you when you fail the class or fail the test right after. I saw my grade, I failed that test. And the professor wasn't one of those easygoing people, but 280 points to be exact. And that's when I knew, like, God really hears me. And it helped me to understand, like, even what we would feel would be superficial things, these natural things, things that have nothing to do with us spiritually or internally, God still makes ways for that. And I'm like, I know I haven't been the most perfect person, but I've been living okay. But he still came through for me. And that's when I really wanted to build my relationship with him. And like you said, like, I didn't count up the cost at that time, because it's like a lot of natural relationships. Like, you fall head over heels for a person. You ignore those red flags. You don't count up the cost, to, like, what is it really going to take for me to maintain a relationship with this person? And I can say, like, I have struggled a bit since that day, in this situation or that situation. But that's really what made me want to be in commune with God. Like, you really hear me, and you really are concerned about me at even this most superficial level. So I know you'll be much more concerned about me, on the deeper things, on the more, hard hitting things.
No, I already you. So okay, so my first experience was, I think my first encounter was during Sunday school. So when I went to Sunday school, I had three altogether. So elementary, middle school, high school. three Sunday school teachers who were absolutely incredible. And they walked the walk and talked the talk from my perspective. They just were incredible. And then the way that they always had about talking about God, like obviously I grew up in the church, so I literally should have been birthed in the church because I literally lived there. And I feel like I had just great examples of why people just loved God so much and the things that they would talk about and share. So I honestly have never questioned God in a sense. Like I've never, like things happen in life, right? I don't question it. My mom passed away. I don't say, how come you didn't save her, God? How come you didn't let her live a little bit longer? Because who knows how long he allowed her to live. So I don't question things when it comes to that. I think that when I remember saying a prayer at 16 years old. I remember, and I never spoke about it to anybody. And I said, God, I want my mom to say that I love you. Because back then, my parents would just say same here. The words I love you was never a thing. So I never heard that. So I remember saying at 16, and that was it. I never spoke about it, never asked anybody, never talked about it, prayed about it again. And at 24, that's when my mom said those words. And I'll never forget it. And I know it was only God who answered that prayer because he answered it in the time frame and in that season of my life. I needed to hear that from my mom. And then her and our relationship was amazing ever since. So that's what I hold on to. Like, I know personally that God is real and that when you do ask him, it's not about, and look at how many years have passed before I even heard it and can remember hearing it, so I will always hold on to that. So I obviously I know God is real.
For me, it was when I turned 22 years old. Because I had started college at 18. I hated college. I hated it. I hated Xavier. I hated driving there. I hated for a whole year. I just hated that place. And my mom said, well, you work, you live here. Why don't you move on to campus? I moved on to campus. My whole life changed. Everything changed. Everything I desired. I wanted to be the big man on campus. I wanted this. I wanted that. I wanted a car. I want this. Everything I could think of that I wanted happened. Everything. I mean, and I loved it. I loved to go into a party and everybody know my name. I loved to go places and they scream. I mean, I fed off it because that's what I wanted. To be able to walk in a place by yourself and everybody know you. And as my senior year went, I felt myself getting lonely and lonely. Felt the walls closing in on me. And I felt things getting darker and darker. And I started realizing that all those things that I wanted that I had, something was still missing. Something had me up at night crying in the bed at night. It was something that was just missing in my life. And I always say, and with guys, there's always a girl that brings you to church. And you start going to church with a girl. And you don't want to be there. You just say, hey, man, I'm dating her, so I'm going with her. She said, I got to bring her. And me and the girl break up, and I find myself continuing to go by myself. And it's just one day that God just said, I was just sitting there, and he said, I'm right here. This is what you've been looking for. This is the relationship you've been searching for. And I remember it because the church at the time, I was our great at St. Stephen's, and we were building a church, so we was in the gymnasium. You have top. So I had to walk all the way down from the top, all the way down the steps, and all the way to the front of the church. And I cried all the way. But after I got there in front of the church, I felt the realness. I felt that. I felt what I was missing and what I was looking for. At that moment, I felt that this is what God has for me. That was my first time. Anybody else? So I did have a question that when Lady Senator was sharing, I thought about this question. I wanted to ask: do we think that when we fall in love, or we with God, things will become easy.
I think that most people will say no, but I think that real answer is yes. And I used to think that it was like because we were being mistaught, but I don't think so. I think it's because we know the goodness and the greatness of God, and we suppose that our newfound relationship with Him and marriage to His goodness is the divorce of bad times. And I just think that's what we feel. Because He is so good, everything is going to be good. And that's not really necessarily the case, because we all still have our cross to bear. So I think it's just it's the absence of us reading the Word of God and getting a true understanding of what coming into relationship with God is really about. And but yeah, I think the answer is that most people think that yes, relationship with God is the absence of trouble. And just because He pushes you to Him doesn't mean that all of your troubles go away. He's just introducing Himself as what the Bible calls a burden bearer or a heavy load sharer. He can take on the burden of it, but it doesn't mean that He's going to remove it. But I think that most of us believe that He will remove it.
I was gonna say I'm in agreement with Pastor and what he was saying. A lot of us feel like, cause this is my perspective. I did think, okay, I'm gonna be good from now on. Like I'm God's girl. Like we straight. Like that's Big Daddy. Like I'm good. But now I think it's more or less becoming more mature in your spiritual walk and understanding, like he said, it's not the absence of trouble, but it's the fact that you have that advocate. You have somebody on your side to help you through that. I shared on Mother's Day, what God told me about my situation. God told me straight up, I'm not going to heal you. And many people would say, well, you're God, you're a healer. But he said, I'm also a sustainer. And that's what I'm going to do for you. For you, I'm going to sustain you. I'm not going to heal you. Somebody else might get healed, but that's not going to be your testimony. You're going to be sustained in the midst of your trouble. And I think we have to grow and mature as believers in our spiritual walk and our understanding to understand that it's not that it's not going to get better, because it does get better. It does get better when you start walking with God, because of the fact that, again, you have that advocate. It might not feel like we think it's supposed to, like it's just going to be all fairy tales and rainbows. No, it's not going to be that. But you have to change your perspective, and you have to change your outlook on it, that even though this might look bad to others, I'm still smiling. I'm still in the best place I can be. I'm safe in his arms. I'm right in his bosom. Like, I'm good. Although this storm and stuff is swirling all around me and I got all this trouble around me, I'm in the best spot that I can be, because I know that God sees me. I know that he hears me, and I'm in his will. So regardless of what's happening, yes, my life is better now because I'm not out trying to do things on my own.
And I'm in total agreement, because that's the same thing. I actually believe that. Once I fell in love with Christ, when I gave my life, I felt everything was going to be smooth, everything was going to be cool. An example, I graduated from college. I was like, okay, wow, I'm about to go. I expected to be working like the next 2 weeks. I couldn't find a job for a whole year. And I still remember this. I remember going to a job interview, dressed up in a suit. I don't know what, I'm here in New Orleans. I was on veterans, so I don't know what it would be comparable here in Houston. A street that's a lot of traffic, a lot of lights. Oh, veterans? Okay. So that's how it is in New Orleans. So I was leaving a job interview. My car broke down on me. I had a suit on. I was sweating. I was walking. I literally saw people laughing at me, because I was just all sweating this suit. My suit was wet, and I'm just walking, trying to go to the gas station, and my car had broken down. And I was like, is this it? Is this as good as it get? I remember that. And I remember just walking and God said, it's gonna get better. And he always and it helped me. He said, just and he always put that thing, he said, a year from now, you're not even gonna remember this. Even though I still remember it. But he put that in my heart, said, a year from now, you're not even gonna remember this. You won't even think about it. Because a year later I was working. But just to add on to that, he put that in my spirit, because even when I got sick and ill in the hospital, I leaned on that same thing that God put in my heart. He said, a year from now, you'll be out of this bed. A year from now, all the pain you're going through, all the crying, all these, the doubts, all the stuff you're going through, a year from now, you're going to look back. But he planted that seed back then when I first fell in love with him, and it also carried me. So our second question is, and this is, for some reason, I don't know why men focus on this question more than women. Will y'all agree? What is my legacy going to look like? Or what is my legacy going to be? And I remember one time we were sitting here talking. We was in a Bible study, and PA brought it up, and he was talking about that. So the interesting thing about this part is we're going to go to Genesis chapter 19, and it's a lot here. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. So I'm going to, because I had the whole thing, but we can't read all that. So I'm going to go here. Everybody remember the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So let's see. Let's start at 12. The two men said to Lot, do you have anyone else, son-in-law, son-in-daughters, anyone else in the city who belong to you? Get them out, because we know who the two men were, right? He said, hurry and get them out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy the city. But his son-in-law thought he was joking. With the coming of the dawn, the two urged Lot, saying, hurry, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in the city and punished. When he hesitated, the man grasped his hand in the hands of his wife and of his daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. And as soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, flee for your life. Don't look back. Don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. But Lot said to them, no, my lord, please. Your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life. But I can flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me. But if I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look here in a town near enough to run to. It is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared. And he said to them, very well, I will grant you this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach there. This is why the town was called Zoar. Z-O-A-R. How you pronounce it? Zoar. Yeah, Zoar. By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. For the Lord out of the heaven, thus he overthrew the city and the entire plain, destroying all those who lived in the city and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back. She became a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain. He saw the dense smoke rising from the land, like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the city where Lot had lived. Lot and his daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay there. He and his two daughters lived in a cave. So the thing that stood out about this scripture and about legacy is something that a lot of people don't talk about. But I'm going to talk about Lot's wife. When she looked back, she became a pillar of salt. When you die, what is the legacy that you leave? What you leave behind will show your children, your family about you and the life that you live. So I've never thought about Lot's wife. What was the legacy that she left when she turned into a pillar of salt? And my question is this, is that, and I'm going down the line of disobedience, being disobedient being disobedient to God. When God is telling you something, but yet you still do something else. How does that affect your legacy? How does it affect the things that you pass on to your children? So when I thought about Lot's wife, that question kept coming in my mind. The decisions that I make, just like the decision that Lot's wife made, will affect my legacy, my children, my family, how they live, the things that they do in their life. So I wanted to ask the question: do we think about that? And how real is it for you? Because of course, we're not going to. Well, we're not going to literally turn up a pillar of salt, but this being God's word, or this being when God is telling us to do one thing and we do something else. But there are some consequences that's tied to it. So the question is, the question is that, do we think about our legacy? And do we think about how legacy is being affected when we not lining up or doing the things that God called us to do?
I feel like I'm the first to answer every time. Um, for me, I don't think that women think about it as much as men. And I think that's because, you all pass your name down. That surname, that last name, it holds weight. And, you want to make sure that you're living up to the name and you're passing on something that, your seed can carry on through the ages. So when people hear your name, it means something. I think that's why it means more to y'all than us. But it is meaningful to me, especially when we're talking about that relationship with God and that falling in love with Jesus and all of that. I want to live a life before my children and for just anyone that I encounter. I want them to see evidence of Christ, evidence of God, evidence of relationship, so that they can carry that on to others that they meet. When I die and I check up out of here, I want people to be like, I knew there was a God because of that person right there, especially my children. I want them to say, I'm a believer because of my mom, because of her. And so, yeah, it's highly imperative for me to pass on, my belief, my relationship, to show them that, hey, God is not just something that, we jump and scream about in church or, he's really real. And I think that that's kind of maybe a downfall for people who grow up in church. It's kind of what do they call it? Maybe like a con, because you're constantly hearing God, 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 God. So you might go into it as a traditional aspect. Well, I go to church because that's just what I've always done. I pray because I was told that's what you should do. I fast on Tuesdays and Fridays because that's what the church does, and a lot of times and I'm going to say we because this was me at a certain point, we miss out on the importance of it and really digging into it because it's just something we've always done. But I think it was my grandparents and my mom, who I saw walking before God, who I saw believing and fasting and praying and seeing things come to fruition for them. And, them just really talking about God in such a way that made me interested in having my own relationship with him. They left a legacy, my grandparents, and, one day my mom, they left a legacy of this is who God really truly is. Not just who we talk about and jump and scream about in church, not just who we put on fancy clothes for at convocation time and go, to see this person or that person. No, this is why we serve God. And I think that's the legacy that I want to leave behind, the impact that I want to leave behind, that my children and the generations to come say, you know what, this is why we believe.
So I actually would give myself a knock on the legacy bit, and because I feel like I don't really think about it maybe as much as I should, and I think that the reason I don't is because I don't feel as though I've done enough. And so, like when I look at my legacy, where I am, what I desire, um, I think, for a lack of a better terms, I'm trying to do more because I want it to be greater. And so, and when I say, I feel like I don't think about it because I'm busy trying to make it more. I'm busy trying to make it more grand. And it's not just in terms of money. I feel like I'm giving my children God. I feel like I've introduced them to God, and I feel like they're growing in God. But I just feel like I can do more, and so I'm trying to focus now on doing more, and not for legacy's sake, but just for life's sake, period. So I think that's where I am right now, trying to expand and multiply what I am, who I am, and what I have at this moment, so that I guess they'll want the legacy. Not to say that they don't, but I just want to make it more. And so I'm focusing now on trying to multiply and make who I am now even greater, and multiply what I have, so that when I am gone, they'll be proud of that legacy.
I want to add this. I also think of my legacy in terms of stewardship. I know that there's a call on my life, and I know that our greatest call here on this earth is to be fishers of men, to draw others to Christ. And so that weighs heavy on me as to what I do in the eyesight of others that I'm around, because when I stand before God on Judgment Day, I don't want him to be like, you had this opportunity to feed this person me, or bring this person to me, or lead your child to me through this, or lead your child to me through that, and you didn't take on that opportunity. You weren't deep enough in me for yourself to be able to pull them in, to rein them in. I don't want to stand before God on Judgment Day and he open up that book and be like, nope, 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 nope. I want to walk through the gates. I want to make it in. And I think that that's what weighs heavy on me as well. How well am I doing with my walk with God and my relationship with God, so that I can give to others the max amount that I can give to them, to encourage them to also build their relationship? Because I don't want to be counted out for any reason, especially not being responsible for, and because I have stewardship over, this or that and the third, or these children. I don't want to be the reason why they didn't see God, or they didn't get as much God as they could have.
And it's interesting because when I asked the question, like Peter was saying, and I thought of it as a guy, me being a guy, and I thought about, I said, well, think about what was your legacy 10, 20, 30. And I started thinking about that, looking at it that way. And being a guy, the first thing I thought about was in 1982, if you go to car school, you can look on the wall and see city champs, and my picture right there. 1985, you can see City Champs baseball and a picture of me in my uniform right there. 2006, you can go to New Orleans and go to Audubon and see we won the city championship, the first one that ever held after the storm with all the schools. We were the city champs. I'm the coach. That's the kind of thing I thought about with legacy. So I say that's kind of in my mind is how it goes. But I started thinking about, just like you said, what am I, because my kids won't get anything from that. That's actually just me just feeling, but when I asked the question, I was like, what is the legacy that you're giving your kids? What is it that they see? And I started thinking about the latter years, the 40s and the 50s, and what effect this is having on my two daughters. What about the kids that I've mentored through the years? How did they see me? And what is that legacy that they're getting? And PA hit it, he hit it on the nose Sunday when he was talking about the saints and what they say, the older saints. Because my mom was, get off the phone, talk to you tomorrow if God say the same. And I'm sitting there when PA is hitting on that, and I'm thinking, and as he started going to all the sayings, I'm going, yeah, I know, we know them. We know them all. But now you understanding what that means in your life now. And I understand the legacy that she left in my life and the legacy that she's continuing to pour in with my relationship with Christ and what I'm doing for my children. Because I can't lead them anywhere. I can only teach them, and they can only see by the example I'm setting. So that's when I started thinking about this is the legacy that I want God to be able to say, I'm proud of, that you left that. So our last question, it's funny that Lady Sunday kind of jumped into it. The last question we had was, what is God asking of you and what he's asking of you in the church? So the scripture, Lady Sunday actually hit it when Jesus called his first disciple. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left the nets and followed him. So when I asked the question of what is God asking of you in the church, because we know that it's to be fisher of men. But in the fishing, I find out that sometimes that is the problem. Because when I started thinking about the church and being fisher of men, God is calling us to pull people to church. But then why are people sometimes leaving? And why are they leaving? Because of people in the church. And then it just hit. God calls us to be fisher of men. Anybody in here been fishing? You go fish to do what? Catch fish. What you do with the fish? Eat the fish. Do we eat the fish as soon as we get out the water? Or do we have to do something else? We have to clean it. We have to devour it, the fish. And it dawned on me like, that's the problem. God called us to be fishermen. He didn't call us to clean the fish. He didn't call us to do all that. And we find that people are walking away because there are people trying to do God's job. They're trying to take the fish and defile the fish. And, she can't wear that to church. Oh, he doesn't have that. Oh, he smell like this. And oh, he smell like. God did not call us to do that. He called us just to be the fisher and let him take control. And when I thought about it, I said that's lined up with that's church 101. The basics. Back to it. Us doing what God called us to do, to be the fisher. And bring in the fishermen and bring in the fish. And let God do the rest. But yet we find it so often people are trying to do God's job. And that's all I have. That's all I got for tonight. But I am asking that question, and that wasn't a question people can answer or not, but it is a question I do want to put in people's heart. What is God asking of you? And what is he asking of you in the church? Because sometimes a lot of people, when they're not coming to the church, they're not answering what God asks. And it's important, and they start to think that that's a something we could just accept. But it's not something you can accept. God is asking more of you. And it can't happen sitting on your couch, you know. And it can't happen watching the TV, you know. A lot of us grew up with grandparents that used to watch the ministers on TV. I don't know, but because my grandmother couldn't go nowhere. So she would, she was at an age, she'd sit up there and she'd watch the minister, baby, get my check. She'd write her little check, put this in the mail, and mail it to Jerry Falwell or whoever she was watching. But we're not aware of that's the same thing we're falling into now. People now fall into that comfort zone of watching church from home, watching it online. And then what are you giving to God? What are you providing and pointing to his church if you're at home on the couch? Look, you have something to say.
I think for me, I feel like my calling, I'm such a behind the scenes person. I've always been that way. And I think for me, I love it. I love cleaning the church. I love coming early in the morning and getting things done. So I love behind the scenes, and I also love children and teenagers more than anything in life. I feel like God has called me and has given me just the tools to be able to speak to them and talk to them on every different level of their age brackets. And so I know for me, that is my calling. I love being in the church. So for me, it's easy for me because I could be here every day, literally, and be happy. So I love it. I remember way back a long time ago, I went to this college called Robert Wesleyan College in upstate, and they had this Christian rap group called God's Original Gangsters that came and spoke and obviously rapped. But it was one thing, something I've never realized or even been a part of in my entire life because, churches back then was very, very strict, right? So you didn't experience that life in a sense. And so I got to go to one, and when I tell you people were coming in from off the streets, and this is I'm from upstate New York, so, there's people that were selling drugs. Walking in, my friends from the college would tell me who each of these people were, because, they would minister to them outside in the streets. But just to watch them flow in and just be there, just to hear, and the words, because I had gotten the CD when it was a CD, and I listened to the lyrics, and the words were incredible, absolutely incredible. And I think that, and I love Kojic. I love everything about Kojic. But I think what, for me and what people probably need to see more of, for this church here, I love the fact that, we can come as we are and don't have to feel a certain type of way. I think that a lot of people are afraid to go back into the churches or find a new church when they move. Like when I went to California, I didn't find a new church. I can't start all over again. Because I just can't go backwards. I just can't go back to all that again. And that's just an unfortunate situation. It's just unfortunate that you have to think like that. But I don't want to have to worry about an outfit. Like, I don't have the right color to wear that day. Or I don't have this blue, I have to wear blue today. I don't want to think like that. It stresses me out so much. So when I came to this church, I was so happy. I could just pull whatever I got to out of my closet. And I don't have to go buy a new outfit. Not that it's not fun to, on certain days or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. But it was something I wasn't stressed about. I shouldn't be stressed going to church. I don't want to be stressed going to church. You know what I'm saying? I just don't. So I think that if more people saw that, I think also that could bring more people into church. But not just that. For me, I know me. I'm always, once I get somebody, especially a teenager, oh, you got to come to church with me. I got a big vehicle for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Because wherever I'm going to be, I'm going to bring somebody's coming with me. They don't have a choice. But that's just my mindset. So I think if we just did more of that And just, I think too, some people are afraid of rejection, you know, like, and I think we have to get away from that, because look at how Christ was, right? Look at how Jesus was rejected so many times. And I think if we could stop, and I will say this, and even though I'm not saying anything about the Mormon churches and stuff like that, they get their doors slammed in their face on a daily basis, because I was one of them. I shut the door in their faces on so many occasions. But I say that, I say that only because I think we don't do that, right? So we don't take that, we don't want to get doors slammed, because my mouth is reckless if somebody's going to slam a door in my face. But that's, but what I'm saying is, if we could just ask somebody and not be afraid, you know, of rejection, I think that's another thing. Like, we have to be able to just not care what, because you know what? One time somebody had came to my house and said something like, we weren't going to stop, this little girl, she wanted to read a little message out of the Bible to me. She's like, I wasn't going to stop by. I said, well, why? She said, because you got too many cars in your driveway. And I'm like, huh? So then I said, but that's how I think. Like, why can't I? Because you don't know if that person is going to remember that you asked them to come to church, and then a year from now they come and then they get saved. You don't know who you're going to touch and when it's the right timing for them to walk into a church. And I think that we have to just start forgetting about what everybody else thinks and just do what we do, because it's really, at the end of the day, it's only for Christ, and hoping that people don't go to hell and burn in hell. And I think that should be the thing that lights us on fire anyway, to make sure people don't burn in hell.
Can I just say I just love you so much? You're like you're in my head, and I was having a conversation the other day, and this ties into what God is asking of me. I was having a conversation the other day with someone, and you know, I won't say this person was being judgmental, but the basis of the conversation was, you know, well, I know this person used to do that, or that person used to do this, and I just can't see past it. And, you know, I speak or whatever, you know, but then I just, you know, move around or whatever have you. And I told this person, they were older than me, and I said, the cross isn't just for you. The cross isn't just for the sins that you find to be redeemable. The cross is for everybody. As long as they still have breath in their body, the cross is for them. Jesus even went to hell after he had died to bring and preach the word there and give them an opportunity. They were already in hell. And I had to tell this person, I said, the cross isn't just for those things that you say a person can be brought back from. The cross is for the murderer. It's for the rapist. It's for any and everybody. And who am I to stand here as filthy as I am today, right here, this minute, this instant, as filthy as I am, and say, you can't worship or you can't have a relationship as deep as mine? Or to say, I'm not going to, you know, treat you as I would anybody else. Because that's not my place. Like you said, our job is to bring people in, not to clean them up, not to deem them worthy enough for Christ. Our job is just to reel them in. And I think that's what God is calling me to, is to be able to reel people in, to reel in this person who's done this or this person who's done that, and to see past it. Because there have been people that I've encountered that I'm like, I would have nothing to say to them knowing what they've done. But as soon as I'm like this, I don't see any of that. And that's all God. That's all God. And I had to realize this walk is not just for me. It's for them too. And then, you know, other people would say, well, I would speak or whatever, or I would, you know, but I wouldn't, you know, but Jesus communed with the sinners and he dined with them. And it wasn't that he was condoning what they did, but he needed them to understand that I'm here for you too. I'm not, me, Jesus, divinity wrapped in flesh, I'm not too good to sit down with you and treat you like my brother over here or my sister over there. And I think that that's what God is calling all of us to. And I think, and I was telling Pastor the other day, I said, I think that's why Word of Life is so different. Because yes, we have the traditional values, and we understand where we come from and the relationship that God wants us to have, but we also understand the relationship that God wants us to have with the sinner, with the murderer, with the rapist, with this, with that person, with the prostitute, he's put us here in this place, and we are collectively a body of believers who may not have gone that route or may not have went that far, but we understand collectively that we're not too good to reach you. What you say, Pastor? No matter where you are, we're not that far. And that doesn't mean in physical distance. That means here in our hearts. No matter where you've gone, no matter what you've been through. Now, obviously, if I know you steal, I'm not going to give you my wallet, or I might not let my kids, whatever have you around that. But I'm not going to necessarily turn my nose up at you. Oh, hey, how you doing? And keep pushing. No, obviously, if Takira is a thief, Takira not coming to my house every weekend. But, she not a thief, y'all. That's my baby. She not a thief. But obviously, I'm still going to extend love, and I'm still going to extend kindness. Because at some point, everybody has to be given an opportunity to change, right? And if we don't allow them to change and to grow, and we're always keeping them right here, what is even the point? Because that's the same thing God does for us. He gives us the opportunity to change, to grow, and expand. He said that when he forgives us, he throws it into the sea of forgetfulness. Somebody talked about a sea being 70,000 feet deep. If he can throw our sins into these multiple seas and forget about them, how much more do we think we are than God that we can't forget the sins of this person or that person? Like, are we bigger than God? Are we putting ourselves ahead of God and say, oh, God might have forgiven you, but not me? Because then that's where we become Lucifer and we get thrown out because we're saying we're better than God. We stand ahead of God. And I think that that's what not only myself, but us here at Word of Life, God is asking of us to be that fisher of men, to where we're not biased or where we're not shrouded with our own pride and self-righteousness.
Yeah, to answer your question, Deke, I think that people don't come to church. Am I right? Your last question was? Yeah. And then you mentioned like some people have been slow to come back, sitting on the couch. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was. Yeah, I think that what's happening is that people don't understand how important their pinky toe is until it doesn't work. And I think that a lot of people don't come to worship because they feel like their absence isn't noticed or valuable. Because people don't, by and large, feel like what they do is that important, and it really is. I think that when, even, I'll just use tonight, so we see this place on a Sunday morning, and those of us that come to Bible study, watch Bible study online, we know how powerful it is and can be. Now, can you imagine if everybody came to home improvement on Wednesday, what this conversation would be like if you add, don't think about bodies, but add experiences. If you add 10 more experiences and testimonies to these conversations, imagine how much better we all would be. All of us would be made the better because it's your experience that you bring to it. So when you hear me preaching and I say oil, that's what it is. It's your experience. It's the crushing that you've had to endure to become who you are. And I think that if we would understand how valuable we are and how much our presence is missed when we are not in the place, then I think that it would help people to understand how much more they should be in worship, because each one of us brings so much. And it's not only just from a leadership perspective, but just from a life perspective. When you are not here because of whatever it may be, and sometimes, a lot of times, it's because you're going through stuff and you just don't want to come. And it's really the opposite. That's when you should come the most, when you're going through. But I think it's because most people don't feel like it's that important. They don't feel like it's a big deal whether they're there or not. But the reality is, it absolutely matters, because you didn't endure that crushing for no reason. You endured that crushing so that everybody else can experience the testimony that you have from the crushing. And so I think that it's valuable. I think that everybody is valuable. And I think that we individually are missing a greater portion of our life and our anointing if you are not here, right? So whenever you are not here, I am off balance because you bring me balance. Your testimony brings me value. But I think that people just don't realize that. I think that people just feel like it's not a big deal.
Messed up. I got on jeans and a shirt. I'm not going in there. So I go in, right? I said, well, I'm going to go in anyway. And I see PA, right? I'm like, and I just give him like the finger, like, I see you. He like, nah, D, come here. I'm like, all of them got on all black. Let him through. Come sit right here, nigga. I'm like, man, I look jacked up sitting here, right? I'm telling you, I was like on a natural high the whole night. I enjoyed myself so much. I was talking about it. I was telling Minister Ellis about it just this past week. I was like, man, do you know what I was on? And I was like, it wasn't nothing like, that's, you was that coach. I don't know what you're talking about. I knew that I had one of the greatest times of my life that night. And what my spirit needed and what my spirit felt. But I also wanted to say something that what First Lady say, be transparent, translucent. All right, so I have to be translucent for my own self. Because First Lady, when she saw my mom, she was like, I thought about Deacon. I said, oh, he must have been with his mom on Mother's Day. And I wasn't. And to be honest with you, I was dressed up, suit on, bow tie, everything. And I watched church from the parking lot of Friday. And I didn't come here. Because of what I was dealing with personally. I got that far. And I'm up there like, I'm like in Fry's going crazy. And this is how beautiful a place Word of Life. When church was over and I saw people hugging, I started to nail it, just come here, just to come walk through the door. I'm here, y'all. I just want to hug. I just want y'all to know, hey, I want to see everybody. And that to me showed me two things. Like PA say, when you're hurting, where you're supposed to go, and people always run from where the place where you're supposed to be. But it also showed me the love that Word of Life had. For me to feel that way, I felt like left out, looking down the screen like, oh, I see Takira hugging somebody. I was like, I want to hug. I want to, I'm looking on the like, I saw Layla do so. I saw Lance. I want a pat on the back. I want to see my people. I want to,